Hello, I'm John McGilvery. I'm the interviewer. Today is Friday. It's April the 28th, and it's 10:50 a.m. We're at the Nagle Council on Aging, and I am interviewing Frank Nagle. Frank, can you tell us how old you are, your date of birth?
August 11th, 1926, I was born.
Okay, and where do you currently live? What community?
Norwell.
Nagle, all right. And what branch of service?
Navy.
Navy. And your dates of service?
January 1st, 1944 to May 25th, 1946.
Okay. Now, where did you grow up?
Worcester.
Worcester? And do you consider Worcester your hometown?
No, I consider it Norwell because I've been here 60 plus years.
Okay. But when you entered the military, it was from Worcester?
Right.
Okay. And what was your highest level of schooling that you completed?
Right out of high school, I went in the Navy.
Okay. So they got an educated individual. All right. So why did you join the military?
Well, the war was on.
Yeah.
And all of my buddies and all the people I associated with up in Worcester in those days were drifting off by degrees to go into service because I figured that I didn't want to be drafted, so I joined the Navy. Now, I had a lot of experience around boats when I was a kid, living down the Cape, so I wanted the Navy. I wanted to go to sea.
Okay.
And they certainly obliged me by sending me to sea.
Plus, they had nice uniforms.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And not only that, but we always ate sitting down.
Yeah. Good for you. Now, did many of your family, relatives, friends join the military?
No.
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 Did any of them disparage you from joining the military?
My father and I had a long talk about that one day because I had brought home a set of papers that I had picked up for the Navy. And he said, "What are these?" And I said, "Well, read them and see." So, of course, it was the enlistment papers for the Navy. He says, "I'm not going to sign those." So he threw them over on the table. And I said, "That's okay. I'll get another set and bring them in." I said, "But I'm going to go in the Navy because I don't want to be drafted. I don't want to be in the Army. I want to be in the Navy. And B, the war is still on. And they're going to get me sooner or later. So I want to go into a branch of the service that I want to go in. And that's why I joined the Navy."
All right. Very logical individual. Do you recall your first days of being in the military? You know, what was that like?
Like it was yesterday.
All right. Tell me a little bit about that. Tell me about what it was like heading down to boot camp and then getting to boot camp.
As I said, I lived in Worcester. So the closest well, actually, there were 3 boot camps around the Worcester area. One was Bainbridge, Maryland. One was San Diego. The third one was Sampson, New York. And I said, "Well, I don't care which one you send me to, but as long as I get in the Navy." They had some openings at Sampson, so they put me on a troop train from Worcester. Myself and I think there were about 7 or 8 of us, and went from Worcester to Sampson, New York on a train. We got up to Sampson in the main gate, and we waited for a bus. And the bus took us down to Sullivan Auditorium, which at that time was the main building at Sampson for handling new recruits. And they brought us in there, gave us probably a 2-hour lecture on the Navy and what we could expect and so forth and so on. And they told us gave us a little background on boot camp and what it was like. I always meant to go back and tell the guy, you asked the wrong questions, pal. Let me get in there. I'll find out what these guys think about the Navy. But, you know, people ask me many times after that, "Did you like the Navy?" I said, "He certainly did." He said, "Would you do it again?" I said, "Tomorrow."
So, well, I'm glad that you feel that way about it. How did you feel about your drill instructors in the Navy?
Well, we didn't have drill instructors like they have in the Army. At Sampson, New York, we had
Very good close friends?
no, we weren't close friends. I wouldn't say we were close friends, no. But we had a great group of guys. The petty officers that were taking care of us and kind of squiring us around and so forth. I remember the first guy we had was a fellow from Binghamton, New York, and he was what was he? I think he was a gunner's mate in the reserve, and he took me and a couple of other guys around and showed us around Sampson. Now, Sampson, New York. Are you familiar with Sampson?
No.
Sampson was a service school base, really, for the Navy. And they had a lot of school units there. They had cooks and bakers, storekeepers, radio school, yeomen, and a few others. So it was like Bainbridge, Maryland. Bainbridge was a service school outfit. So they didn't lean on any one particular school or anything else, just told us what was there. Because in the initial indoctrination in the Navy, they gave you a series of tests. One of the tests was to see how well you could differentiate between a dot and a dash. And you can, when you first hear those coming over the wires, it's kind of jumbled up. But then when you start to pay attention to what it is, you can pretty quickly identify the difference between a dot and a dash. Bang, they had me in radio school before you knew it.
Wow. So after boot camp,
yep.
That's what you did? They sent you off to radio school?
They sent us to an outfit called OGU, which means outgoing unit. When you get out of boot camp, you go into a kind of a holding pattern, right. And that was what OGU was.
And that's where after that, then you went for additional training?
Yeah, in OGU, they bounced you off a few different instructors and so forth and people, but the guy that I had talked with about radio school and so forth, he said, you know, you have an aptitude for being able to differentiate between a dot and a dash. And I said, oh, okay. He said, so I'm putting you in for radio school.
So where did you go to radio school?
Sampson, New York.
Sampson, you stayed right there?
Right there.
So after radio school, did they then assign you to a ship, or did they send you to a permanent duty station?
No, they kept us right there for a while because when I was there, remember now, the war is going on, and a lot of people coming in and out and so forth. So I got friendly with a couple of the instructors up there, and they said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to go to sea. That's why I joined the Navy. So he said, okay, let me see what's coming up. So he and I chatted for a couple of days and so forth, and finally he said, they got some openings. There's a brand new light cruiser being put in commission in Philadelphia Navy Yard, the USS Wilkes-Barre. And the Wilkes-Barre was due to, let's see, I think I was in the first group of new crew members for the Wilkes-Barre. I stayed on that Wilkes-Barre from the time I went on, which was in mid-1944, right to the end of the war, or to the end of my enlistment.
Wow. And then, that light cruiser joined up with Admiral Halsey, is that correct?
Yes, Halsey at that time was in charge of the 3rd Fleet. And the Cruiser Division 17, which was the one I was in, was Wilkes-Barre, Astoria, Springfield, and Pasadena. 4 cruisers in this division, and they had openings in the Wilkes-Barre, so that's where they put me.
So that would have been that task force
38.
38.
Yep.
Okay. So when they did battle stations, you were actually on the bridge when.
I was.
Yeah.
It was my original battle stations were on the signal bridge, and I liked it up there because you could see what was going on.
Yeah, you had like a front row
Ooh,
seat.
I didn't want to be down in the bowels of the ship in the engine room.
Yeah. Who would?
No. So I was up there. We had a pretty good view of the world up there. But I tell you, the people on that ship, that Wilkes-Barre crew, was a fantastic crew. They were great. And when I went up on the bridge, the first guy I met was a first-class signalman, and he said, "This your first ship?" Yep. I said, "Okay, we'll take care of you," and they did. It was great.
Wow. So, did you have any other engagements, while you were on that ship? Or did you go on patrols?
Yep. When I got assigned to the Wilkes-Barre, remember she was in being commissioned at Philadelphia Navy Yard. I got on the ship, and a week after I got on, we sailed. And the first place we went was Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. That was the commissioning destination, and I liked it. It was great. I thought I'd be out on the deck all the time. As much time as I could spend out on the deck, I was there. But of course, being in destination, my original destination was the Radio Shack. But on my off hours, I'd be out on the deck.
Jeez. Now, I understand that your ship was involved during the battle for Iwo Jima.
Yes, it was. If you get a map of that area and start down at the Philippines at the bottom and draw a straight line up, you go through the Philippines, Iwo Jima, Okinawa, Japan. It's a straight line. And that was what we did. When I first went in the Navy, my first port of call was the Philippines. And then we got down to Wilkes-Barre, straight up that straight line and as far as Japan. Our final destination was Japan.
Wow. And was your ship there for the surrender? Or?
No, well, we were in the fringe. If you get a picture of Tokyo Bay, where the surrender took place, we were probably about a mile away from where we could see all the ships that were gathered.
Sure.
And the Missouri was there, and all the big stuff.
All right. Well, Frank, from now on, when you tell the story, you were there.
I'm there.
You're there.
We were there.
I say after all that time to be a mile away, that constitutes being there. So you might not have been on the Missouri, but
No.
you were close enough.
Yeah.
Let me ask, while you were in the military, did you make many close friends?
I made a lot of friends on the Wilkes-Barre.
Okay.
And then when they did, and then I was in the Admiral's task force on every cruiser an admiral had in his command, and I was part of the Admiral's staff. I made a lot of friends that way, but I made more friends in the deck gang that we'd hang out with, and when we go ashore in a port or something, we'd go have a few beers with my peers in there, not lieutenants and
Sure.
captains.
Yeah.
All due respect to the captains.
What about entertaining yourself in the other shipmates? How do you entertain yourself on board ship? And then, do you ever get to go on leave? I mean, in the midst of the Pacific,
Well,
you're entitled to leave. How do you get to take it?
it depends upon where the ship goes. We were fortunate on the Wilkes-Barre because they had an admiral on the Wilkes-Barre, but so if he wanted to go somewhere, or if he wanted to get involved in something, he was pretty free to do it. The admiral we had, J. Carey Jones, he went from our ship to be superintendent of Great Lakes Naval Training Station in Chicago. And that was when I was in the service, that was one of the biggest boot camps in the Navy. And Jones was the admiral in charge of that, and he was on the Wilkes-Barre with us at the beginning. Good guy.
Okay. But now on ship, did they show movies? Were there ever any USO shows that you could go to?
We didn't have any USO shows, but we always had movies, and we'd have them on the fantail, which is the back of the ship.
Sure.
And we always had, the Navy was pretty good at getting first-run movies. I'll say that for them. The latest movies we always got. And our captain was, friendly with a lot of the other captains in the area, and he'd always make sure that we got a good swap. When they took the movies that we had, we'd get the movies from somebody else. But we always had the good movies. We'd show them on the fantail, and we would do that not close to where the action was happening. For example, when I first went out to the Pacific, we went to the Marshall Islands. When we left Hawaii, that was the next stop, was the Marshall Islands. And the Marshalls were a big area. If you look at a map, I guess I could say you pinpoint it from Japan and come back towards Massachusetts. In a straight line, you run right into Marshall Islands. We were very lucky in our selections of movies. We didn't have any USO shows come on because we were never really in any one spot for long enough to house a USO show. But we got the movies.
Good. And then occasionally you'd pull into some port and be able to go ashore with your shipmates and
well, the only time
go to the local church and
the only time we got to do that when we first went out to the Pacific. Now they had a huge map on board the Wilkes-Barre, and I go down and look at it every once in a while and pinpoint where we were in the whatever close proximity was with the next big piece of land. Our first venture was from San Diego to the Hawaiian Islands. And the first port we hit was Pearl Harbor. Now at that time, the war was still on. So we didn't want to, I think the captain said, we're not going to spend a hell of a lot of time here because they're not going to let us. So that was our first port. The Marshall Islands were after Hawaii, up in if you look, it's up in the right-hand corner of the map. Still now, we don't see anything that looks like a battle zone. Not since I left the United States, nothing. So they decided that they'd moved our ship and 2 or 3 other cruisers up to the Marshalls, and they were going to form some different task force units. The first night we were there, beautiful, clear, sunny, starry night, and all of a sudden we're having movies now on the fantail. All of a sudden we hear general quarters go off. Now, this was the first time we had heard general quarters on board ship, first time. And we weren't sure what the hell to do. I mean, everybody's running in different directions. They didn't know what to do because nobody had told us about that. So finally, one of the chiefs came out and told us what was going on. They said a Japanese plane had snuck through the radar and flew over where we were in Iniwetok in the Marshalls. And that's what caused all the skirmish. That was my first venture into the war part of it.
So the Japanese pilot didn't like the movie.
Kept right on going.
Didn't like the movie and took off.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's lucky he didn't get his ass shot out of the sky.
Well, it sounds like, from my point of view, that you didn't get a lot of time off of the ship. So when you returned to the States, did you have leave built up? Were you able to take time off when you got back to the States?
Well, I guess the best way to put it is when the war was on, you didn't get time to leave anyway.
Yeah.
But when we got the word that the peace treaty was being signed, and the minute the peace treaty was signed, that's when they started sending people back to the United States. Up until that point, we were out there, and the peace treaty was signed in Japan, in Tokyo Bay. But we had been in the Philippines before, and we had seen some of the Navy rules and regulations in full force in the Philippines. And then, as I say, when I looked at this big map, I still see it, straight line from the Philippines right up to Japan, and that's what we did. We followed that.
Well, listen, I got a couple of questions here.
Sure.
Sort of general ones. I'd like to know, can you tell me some of your most memorable experiences while you were in the military, and then follow that up with some of your most humorous experiences in the military?
Well, I think the memorable one, most memorable anyway for me, was when we were down in the Philippines. And now this is the furthest away from the United States that we've been, in the Philippines. And it was hotter than the hammers of hell down there because it's right on the equator. And I said, Jesus, I wish the hell they'd get us out of here, out of this heat, because it's terrible. You know, you go down and we didn't have air conditioning. What do you? And at that time of the no such thing as air conditioning. They'd have big fans and so forth going, but you know that's just blowing the hot air around. But you get used to it fairly quickly because you're out in the ocean. So it didn't really bother us too much, but I didn't like that part of the beginning. But that was my beginning sortie into the Navy way of doing things, because we had my first battle stations really were on the signal bridge. And the good part about that was in the open air, wide open. I always said that if I was going to get hit, I wanted to see it coming. I didn't want to, I'd be down 10 decks below, you know, and have some bomb go in. But I always tell people that you don't really have a choice when you go in the Navy where you go. I mean, they're going to tell you where to go. But the thing I liked about it was that they really, I got to give them credit. The officer crew that we had on board ship, they were phenomenal. All of them. Except one guy. And he was the chief bosun. And he was the worst pain in the ass you ever saw. I mean, he didn't want to be there. I think he wanted to be back home with his wife in the middle of the country somewhere, but he didn't want to be out there. Louis B. Mayer. The name is right there with me. Because
sounds like a movie producer.
Yeah, he was tough. He was a real tough guy. But most of my experiences in the service were good. The crews that I served with, I was going to say, the Admiral was due to leave the Wilkes-Barre. and move on to another ship. The next one he was going to go to was a Springfield. Now he was in charge of Cruiser Division 17, and there were 4 cruisers in there. And he decided that he wanted to go on to Springfield. Because I happened to be on his staff as a radio operator, he took me and I think 8 or 9 other guys with him to the Springfield. So we met a whole different crew, whole different experience and so forth. We were still the same admiral, but we were okay. And we did that twice more. So I at least moved around a little bit and got on different ships.
Did you move up in rank because you did that, or?
No, the Navy, you know, you had to spend a certain amount of time in the rank you were in. So,
okay.
you know, you start off as an apprentice seaman, the bottom of the stack,
Yeah.
and go up. I went apprentice seaman, seaman second, seaman first, yeoman third, and I was due to get yeoman second, and I get discharged.
All right. Okay. Speaking of which, can you tell me what it was like the day you got discharged? Do you remember that?
I do, because we were discharged at the Fargo building in Boston.
All right. And did your folks know you were coming home?
No.
All right.
No, nobody knew.
All right.
We left the Fargo building. It's right on Summer Street in Boston.
Yep.
And I had my sea bag on my shoulder. And that was one thing I liked about the Navy. Before you went anywhere and transferred, you had the sea bag. And the sea bag had all your worldly possessions in it. If it wasn't in there, you didn't need it. That's what Chief used to tell me. He said, if you haven't got it in the bag, you don't need it. And I carried that same sea bag all through the Navy, from ship to ship to ship. And it got to the point where I wouldn't unpack the whole sea bag and then have to repack it again. I'd only take out what I needed. I never did get to the bottom of the bag before I got discharged, so I didn't remember what the hell was in there. But we were, at least in my case, and being a yeoman at the time, they were in big demand. They needed yeomen. And of course, I could type, and that helped me out because if the orders were coming in, I'd get them.
I'd change them.
I thought of it.
But now, let me just ask, when you did get discharged,
yeah,
and it was at the Fargo building,
yeah,
and you grabbed your sea bag,
take it right out,
headed right to Worcester?
I got out on Summer Street, walked up to South Station, got on a train and went to Worcester.
And your folks didn't know you were coming?
Didn't know I was coming.
Just knock on the door and...
I got it. My mother had died years ago. Oh. My father was a fireman in the fire department. And I remember getting off the train. And in those days, service personnel were a big deal. Everybody want to do something for you. They want to help you out and so forth. I was talking to one girl, and I guess it might have been her boyfriend. I was in South Station trying to get a train to Worcester. And they said, can we help you? I said, yeah. One of you two want to pick up this sea bag and throw it on your shoulder and carry it on for me? Oh, no, no. I said, well, then don't join the Navy. I got on the train, and the conductor was a peach of a guy. He said, anything I can get you? I said, no, sir, just tell me when to get off. I got off the train in Worcester, walked out Union Station into Kelly Square. I didn't know where I was going, except I was going to my house as soon as I could find it. But my family had moved while I was in the service to another part of the city. So I did have some money from my mustering out pay. So I got a cab, and I said to the guy, I don't know where I'm going, but this is the address. So he said, oh, he said, I just getting home from overseas? And well, I said, yeah, not too long ago. And he said, the ride's on me. They took me right to my new place of residence. I had, before I left, I had gotten a dog, a Cocker Spaniel. And this dog was a barker. She loved to bark and so forth. When I went home this day, got out of the cab, went around the driveway. They lived up on the second floor. Walked up the second flight of stairs. The dog was at the door, never made a sound, not one peep. I knocked on the door. My aunt came to the door, and of course it's the first time they had seen me in 2.5 years. And the dog just sat there and looked at me like I was a long lost soul. Not a soul, not a sound. So we had a very tearful reunion with my aunt and so forth. My father hadn't gotten home yet, and he didn't know I was coming. So he walked in after he came home from work in the fire department. We had another tearful reunion. So it was nice to be home. We had a good time.
Now, did you take a little bit of time off? Did you relax, take some vacation time? Did you go right to work?
No.
Did you go to school? What did you do then?
I didn't take any time off. I decided that I wanted to find something to do. I wanted to get a job, and had to make some money. Wanted to buy a car, so I got a job right away. I went down to one of the local banks, the Worcester County Trust, walked in, talked to a friend of my father's who was the treasurer, and he welcomed me home and thanked me for my service and all that stuff. And I said, okay, Mr. Flynn, $24 question. You have a job? He said, we'll find something for you. And I started in the bank.
No. Well, let me ask, since then, what have you done? You somehow wound up here in Nagle, so what brought you here? What about getting married and family? And...
Yeah, it was a while before I got married.
Yeah.
I met my wife. I'm just trying to remember what the circumstance was now, but I'll think of it in a minute. But
White fuel.
White fuel.
White fuel.
yeah, I was working at the time. I got a job at White Fuel Corporation in South Boston, and my wife was working there. Or my future wife was working there, and I met her one noontime. I went up to lunch with my friend, and I said, "Who's the lady over there?" He said, "That's Marie Gallagher." I said, "Why don't you go over and introduce yourself?" I said, "I think I might." So I did. I sat down and talked with her, and we chatted. She said, "Nice to see you," and got up and walked away. I said, "Well, now that's I either got to change the soap that I'm using or something." But I didn't say any more about it, and so I went to work there, and I worked in their data processing department. Now, in those days, IBM was just getting involved in the punch card business. And I went to work in their data processing department, which was punch cards and so forth, but it was no computers. It was all punch cards in those days. They didn't have any computers. So we had a wonderful time though there, wonderful. My wife was, when I met her, I said, how's the, she said, "How do you like White Fuel?" I said, "I like White Fuel a lot," and so forth. Then she said, "Well," I said, "Good, how about going out to dinner some night?" She said, "Yeah, we'll think about it." That was the end of that. Stop, bang.
Wow.
But we got together again, and I was married for a long time.
Well, let me ask a couple of things. How do you think the military affected your life or influenced your life?
The regimentation was the first thing. No question about it. It wasn't a question of going to school or doing that. It was a regimentation. They told you when to get up, when to go to bed, when to eat, and when not to eat. And that was for a kid from Worcester who was never used to regimentation of any form, other than maybe a little from your family. But the service regimentation was much different. I would recommend the service to any kid who still doesn't know where he wants to go. He's in let's say he's in a crossroads in his life. I'd recommend going to service. Many times I talk to kids, I said, you know, you should go down and sign up in the Navy, or sign up in the Marines, or sign up in the, whatever. But get yourself acclimated and used to regimentation, because that's what you're going to get the minute you step out in the business world. Some guy's going to tell you what to do, and you're not going to like it right off the bat. But I was just lucky. I had some great mentors as I was growing up. And the service people were one group of them.
And speaking of the service, and you had friends in there, do you ever go to any reunions? Do you ever stay in contact with any of the friends that you made, shipmates?
Not really being friends, because most of the guys that I were on the ship had lived in different parts of the country, not from around here. Or if you were in an army unit, it'd be a little different. But in the Navy, the guys came from anywhere. And my particular department on the Wilkes-Barre, we had guys from the Middle West, the Far West, and the Southwest. Nobody from New England, except me and one other guy. It was just the luck of the draw and the way the Navy picked their people.
Yeah.
He did go to a reunion, the Wilkes-Barre reunions. Remember?
Oh yeah, I've been to Wilkes-Barre reunions, and they tried to have a reunion every 5 years, but that didn't quite work.
Well, let me ask, we've got to wrap this up now. Is there anything that you would like to add that we have not covered in this interview?
Bunker Hill.
Something, Bunker Hill maybe?
The Bunker Hill was an aircraft carrier, and we as a cruiser, we were her sort of guardian ship. Every major carrier has a cruiser with it. Kind of goes along with it and so forth as a kind of a
Bodyguard.
yeah, like a bodyguard. And I remember going alongside the Bunker Hill after she was hit by 2 kamikaze planes, and we were ordered by the admiral to go along and help take on her wounded, help put the fire out, and so forth. We had a lieutenant commander on there by the name of Al Gore on our ship, who was a repair officer. When he got the word that the admiral had told us to go alongside and help the carrier with the fire and so forth, Gore says, "What do you think we are, a fireboat? We're a cruiser. We're not a fireboat. We're not going to run around with a hose." That's what we did. We tied up alongside the Bunker Hill for probably, I'd say 3.5, 4 hours, blazing away. And we're down there throwing everything, all the water we got, we're pumping into the Bunker Hill. We were on one side, and there was another cruiser, I don't remember what it was, down the other side, pouring water in from the other side. I didn't think we'd ever get that fire out.
Wow.
But it was those kind of things, you know, you think about every once in a while, but I don't think about those too often.
Sure. Well, listen, Frank, I want to thank you for taking part in this Massachusetts Veterans Oral History Project and
That's good.
sharing your reflections. And I want to thank you for your service to your country and to your community and to the Commonwealth. So thank you very much.
You're quite welcome. My pleasure.